chasing the stars, we'll stride into the dawn. Never back down till the battle is won. Face each foe with hearts brave and true, unafraid of the unknown, because I'll face it all with you.
Hello, I'm the reviewer. You review it, I review you. This is my partner, Mr. It. Patreon request today, the Wrestling with Regret review of Wanna Be the Strongest in the World. Yes?
What makes this interesting is that this show is ecchi, a genre of anime that leans more toward the pervy side. It's not full-on pornography like hentai, but it's a couple of steps below that.
I hate how for the first time I know exactly what he's talking about, and this is the subject matter.
Here's a disclaimer, I am not an anime guy. I'm not anti-anime.
Anti-May, if you will.
And I would never ever judge somebody for being a fan of anime, or more specifically, its more overly sexual genres. I mean, Lord knows I get enough flack for being a wrestling fan, so far be it from me.
Much like Mr. It when he's out on the town, I smell a butt.
However, I will judge you if you bought one of these. This little number is just one piece of show-related merchandise I stumbled upon while doing research for this episode.
Uh-oh.
Have at the...
Neela, no! I'm sure he's not casting shade on body pillows as an art form, just this one in particular!
The hero of our story is Sakura, a 17-year-old who's the star of the pop idol group Sweet Diva. Her rival and best friend Elena is also part of the group, but always seems to come up short to Sakura in terms of popularity. Come on, girl, you gotta bump up those pillowcase sales!
Okay, it's possible that his issue is that these specific ones depict girls who are canonically underage, which would be fair, don't get me wrong, but if that's the case, I feel like it needs to be made clearer.
Here's one of the trademarks of this show. Moaning. Lots and lots of painful moaning.
Yeah, you would too if you were being held in that position.
Now, don't worry, friends, because if their screams and looks on their faces aren't enough to tell you how much pain and agony these ladies are in, you could always check their crotches.
She's going to break my hip!
Okay, that one I get having a problem with because it is needlessly gratuitous.
In fact, if I didn't know any better, I'd say this whole wrestling thing was an elaborate excuse to animate bouncing boobies and bulging coochies all under the guise of story progression. Clever move, Japan.
Yeah, and cows go moo.
Sakura gets schooled by Ryo and even loses her hair in the process. Undeterred, she vows to go pro to defend the honor of idols everywhere.
Care to explain why the impromptu barbershop was important?
Whoa, hang on, is Sakura getting attacked by her clone now? Oh, no, wait, it's just one of the half-dozen or so characters who look almost exactly like her, except the color of her hair is off by a few degrees.
On the one hand, typical non-anime fan criticism. On the other hand, not always an entirely invalid one.
You might be stubborn, but you're still just a pansy-ass little wannabe.
What the hell was that?
Sakura loses dozens of matches in a row, which causes fans to lose interest in her, both in the cartoon and in the real world.
You mean the newbie still has a long way to go when fighting against professionals and isn't instantly a champion? Who would have guessed?
Some people are calling this rematch the Tussle of the Titans. The only thing titanic about my opponent are her losses.
Not true.
Okay, fair.
But Sakura is able to defy the odds and defeat the veteran with her new double kick finishing maneuver, scoring her first ever victory.
Okay, still a little out of my depth here, but isn't kicking like this an illegal move in wrestling?
We then meet Jackal Tojo, the world champion in all of women's wrestling, with a name that sounds like it was auto-generated.
Yeah, because real pro wrestlers don't have weird-ass names.
We're introduced to Moe, a high school freshman who's also a karate champion.
They literally called the young girl Moe.
While all this is going on, we meet a mysterious wrestler named Blue Panther, not to be confused with the luchador from AAA back in the 90s.
Honestly, that probably was the real-world inspiration.
So it turns out that Elena was the one behind the mask the entire time. Well, technically it was her secret trainer for those first two appearances, but she was only a placeholder for Elena for when the time was right. You know what, screw it, let's say it was Elena the whole time.
Actually, that explains how she was able to rise through the ranks so quickly, so that's kind of an important distinction.
Her whole plan is to force Sakura into retirement so she can come back and rejoin Sweet Diva. Now, I don't know about you, but forcing someone to join a group by beating them doesn't sound like the healthiest thing for a relationship.
Not to mention, crazy dangerous.
But hey, it's worked in wrestling before. I mean, who can forget the cat joining Right to Censor? Rey Mysterio joining the LWO? No.
There are the wrestling references I have no context for. Okay, to be fair, given what they're in response to, I can assume that these things did not end well.
1, 2,
Thanks, Light!
The can light in the rafters sees and knows all.
I realize that's my dream, that if we challenge each other and challenge ourselves, we can accomplish something amazing!
You do realize that most Japanese pop idol singers usually phase out at around your age, right?
Hey, they could be different. Probably not, but still.
As Sakura decides which route to take, the fans begin chiming in, with most of them agreeing they want her back in Sweet Diva, after they just spent the last 10 episodes or so cheering her on for following her wrestling dreams.
Yeah, that kind of feels backwards, doesn't it? Usually the fans are 100% behind whatever the protagonist wants.
As for all the titillation, it was more comical to me than anything.
Honestly, that's kind of why I don't have a problem with it in any show. If you're not into it, you can easily laugh at how blatant it is.
Here's hoping I don't have to see any jiggling junk whenever I get around to watching Tiger Mask W, and I hope to God there aren't any pillowcases for that show.
Me, 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 me. I'm not crazy about this video. To his credit, it's a bit more accessible to non-wrestling fans than other Wrestling with Regret episodes I've seen. However, I think my biggest problem is the constant complaining about how gratuitous the fan service in this show is. On the one hand, he probably did it to illustrate how annoying it was, but on the other hand, constantly hearing about it got just as annoying. Not to mention, despite claiming not to be judgmental of anime fans, it still came across that way to me. I'm the reviewer. You review it, I review you.